Welcome back to Tales Beyond Borders. Canada is often seen as one of the safest countries in the world, but beneath its polite surface lie stories that are chilling, bizarre, and unforgettable. From maple syrup theft worth millions to cannibal killers who shocked the globe, these are the top 10 strangest true crimes in Canadian history. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's dive in. Case 1. Luka Magnotta, the cannibal killer. Our first case takes us to Montreal in 2012, where Luka Magnotta committed one of the most disturbing crimes in Canadian history. Magnotta filmed himself killing and dismembering Jun Lin, a Chinese international student, in his apartment. But the horror didn't end there. Magnotta mailed body parts to the Conservative Party headquarters and various schools across the country. He uploaded the murder video online and taunted police through social media posts, turning his crime into a twisted game of cat and mouse. An international manhunt ensued, with Magnotta fleeing to Europe. He was finally captured at an internet cafe in Berlin, casually reading news articles about himself. The case horrified the world and raised disturbing questions about the intersection of social media, mental illness, and violence. Magnotta was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. His crimes blurred the line between reality and internet horror, showing how the digital age could amplify evil in unprecedented ways. Case 2. The Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist. Not all Canadian crimes involve violence. Sometimes they involve the country's most precious liquid gold. Between 2011 and 2012, thieves executed one of the most uniquely Canadian heists in history, stealing nearly 3,000 tons of maple syrup worth over $18 million. The theft occurred at a warehouse in Quebec that stored syrup for the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers, which controls about 77% of the world's maple syrup supply. The thieves were sophisticated, gradually siphoning syrup from barrels and replacing it with water to avoid immediate detection. The crime was discovered during a routine inventory check when inspectors found barrels that should have contained syrup were either empty or filled with water. The heist was so massive, it actually affected global maple syrup prices. Several people were arrested and convicted, with the ringleader receiving 8 years in prison. The case proved that even Canada's sweetest treasure could inspire organized crime on an international scale. Case 3. Vince Lee, the Greyhound Bus Murder. On July 30th, 2008, passengers on a Greyhound bus traveling across the Manitoba Prairie witnessed one of Canada's most shocking public murders. Vince Lee, seemingly without warning, attacked 22-year-old Tim McLean with a knife. The attack occurred as McLean slept, listening to music. Lee suddenly began stabbing him repeatedly before beheading him in front of horrified passengers. When police arrived, Lee was found eating parts of the victim's body and had barricaded himself on the bus. Lee was eventually arrested after a tense standoff. During his trial, he was found not criminally responsible due to schizophrenia and was committed to a mental health facility. The case sparked intense national debate about mental health treatment and public safety. In 2017, Lee, who had changed his name to Will Lee Baker, was granted an absolute discharge, meaning he was no longer subject to any conditions or monitoring. This decision remains controversial and continues to divide Canadian public opinion about justice and mental illness. Case 4. The Ken and Barbie Killers. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka seemed like the perfect Canadian couple, attractive, young, and seemingly in love. But behind their facade lay one of the most disturbing criminal partnerships in Canadian history. Between 1990 and 1992, the couple kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered teenage girls Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. Even more shocking, they were responsible for the death of Karla's own 15-year-old sister Tammy during a Christmas Eve assault in 1990. The couple videotaped their crimes, creating evidence that would eventually convict them. Bernardo was sentenced to life imprisonment, but Homolka struck a controversial plea bargain before the videotapes were discovered, receiving only 12 years in prison. Homolka's early release in 2005 sparked outrage across Canada. Known as the Deal with the Devil, her plea bargain remains one of the most controversial legal decisions in Canadian history. The case exposed how a seemingly normal couple could hide such monstrous behavior. Case 5. The Octopus Murder Plot. In 1976, Canadian journalist Victor Malarek uncovered one of the most bizarre organized crime conspiracies in the country's history. Known as the Octopus Murder Plot, it involved a complex web of mafia connections, corrupt officials, and assassination plans in Montreal. The plot involved hitmen planning to murder several businessmen and rivals in what investigators described as an octopus-like network of criminal connections. Secret recordings revealed discussions of contract killings, extortion, and corruption reaching into legitimate businesses and government offices. The investigation exposed how deeply organized crime had penetrated Canadian society, particularly in Quebec. Multiple arrests were made, but the full extent of the conspiracy was never completely unraveled. The case became a landmark in Canadian organized crime investigation, showing that even the country's reputation for law and order couldn't protect it from sophisticated criminal networks. Case 6. The Pickton Pig Farm Murders. Robert Pickton operated a pig farm in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, but it concealed one of Canada's most horrific killing sprees. Between the 1980s and his arrest in 2002, Pickton murdered at least 49 women, many of whom were Indigenous women and sex workers from Vancouver's downtown east side. Pickton lured victims to his farm, where he killed them and disposed of their remains by feeding them to his pigs. The farm became a house of horrors where human remains were mixed with animal waste and scattered across the property. The case exposed serious failures in police investigations, as many disappearances weren't thoroughly investigated due to the marginalized status of the victims. Families had been reporting missing women for years before authorities took action. Pickton was eventually convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder, though he bragged to an undercover officer that he had killed 49 women. The case led to significant changes in how Canadian police handle missing persons cases and highlighted the vulnerability of marginalized communities. Case 7. The Bathtub Girls. In January 2003, Mississauga, Ontario became the site of one of Canada's most shocking family murders. 2 teenage sisters, aged 15 and 16, drugged their mother, Linda Anderson, with crushed Tylenol 3 tablets before drowning her in the family bathtub. The sisters had been inspired by crime television shows and carefully planned the murder to look like an accidental drowning. They called 911 and performed fake CPR, telling paramedics their mother had slipped and hit her head in the bathtub. However, the autopsy revealed the presence of codeine in the victim's system, and police began investigating the death as a homicide. The sisters eventually confessed, revealing they had been planning the murder for months. Their motive appeared to be freedom from their mother's strict parenting and the desire to inherit her life insurance money. Both sisters were convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison, making them among the youngest family killers in Canadian history. Case 8. The Crossbow Cannibal of Toronto. Mark Twitchell was an aspiring filmmaker from Edmonton who became obsessed with the television series Dexter, about a serial killer who targets other criminals. In 2008, his obsession turned deadly when he decided to turn fiction into reality. Twitchell lured Johnny Altinger to a garage by posing as a woman on an online dating site. When Altinger arrived, Twitchell attacked him with various weapons, eventually killing him. He then attempted to dispose of the body by dismembering it and burning the remains. Twitchell had previously attempted to murder another man using the same method, but that victim managed to escape and report the attack to police. The survivor's testimony, combined with Twitchell's own detailed journals about his crimes, led to his conviction. During the investigation, police discovered that Twitchell had been planning multiple murders and had created detailed plans for disposing of bodies. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Case 9. The Richardson Family Murders. On April 23, 2006, the small town of Medicine Hat, Alberta, was shocked by a triple homicide that involved one of Canada's youngest killers. 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson and her 23-year-old boyfriend Jeremy Steinke murdered Richardson's parents and her 8-year-old brother Jacob. The couple had met online and developed an obsession with vampires and goth culture. Richardson's parents disapproved of the relationship due to Steinke's age, which the couple saw as the reason to eliminate the family. The murders were particularly brutal, with the family being stabbed multiple times. Richardson herself stabbed her younger brother, making her one of the youngest people ever convicted of multiple murders in Canada. Richardson was sentenced to 10 years in prison, the maximum allowed for someone her age at the time. She was released in 2012 after serving her full sentence and completing rehabilitation programs. The case raised serious questions about juvenile justice and the influence of online relationships on young people. Case 10. The ice storm Looters. In January 1998, one of Canada's worst natural disasters created an unexpected crime wave. The Great Ice Storm paralyzed Quebec and Ontario, leaving millions without power for weeks. In the chaos that followed, organized looters took advantage of the emergency situation. As entire neighborhoods sat in darkness, criminals moved through abandoned areas, breaking into homes and businesses. They specifically targeted areas where residents had been evacuated, knowing that response times for police and security would be severely delayed. The looting wasn't random. It was organized and systematic. Criminals used the cover of the emergency to steal everything from electronics to cash registers, loading up trucks and making multiple trips to the same areas. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police and local forces eventually restored order, but not before significant damage was done. The case highlighted how natural disasters could create opportunities for crime even in one of the world's most law-abiding countries. From serial killers and twisted couples to million-dollar syrup heists and natural disaster looters, Canada proves that even the most peaceful nations harbor disturbing secrets. These 10 cases show us that evil can emerge anywhere, often hidden behind the most unsuspecting facades. Which case shocked you the most? The pig farm murders that exposed systemic failures, or the teenage sisters who killed their own mother? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Tales Beyond Borders for more incredible true crime stories from around the world. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.